Who is the best safety in the 2025 NFL Draft? Today, we set out to find that question out by going through the top 10 best safeties in the league in the 2025 NFL Draft. And honestly, this was one of my favorite positions to look at and study the tape over in this draft. There were a lot of really, really talented safeties, and this was honestly a really deep safety class. Certainly a lot better than last year's. A lot of guys who were honorable mentions, the guy on the screen being probably the best example of that, Latham Ransom, a guy who in most other drafts would be a shoe-in for a top 10 player. A little bit of a one-trick pony in the sense that he is probably the best as far as side-to-side range and tackling goes in this draft, at least in my opinion, but doesn't have any as good of coverage skills as some of the other players. And that just goes to show how good this draft is. There are several guys who are really good at coverage below him. Guys like, the likes of Brian Anderson, Brian Addison, Malachi Moore, Marcus Barnes, Tommy McCormick, Quinn Shudel, JJ Roberts, guys that, I would definitely say that, these guys are not going to be guys who go in the first, second, third round. But down the line, sixth, seventh round, there is a lot of value for cornerback, for safeties, and guys who can even play undrafted as undrafted free agents who can make a name for themselves at the next level. But so many honorable mentions, so many guys who I ended up leaving off the list. But certainly, I'm confident with the 10 I have for the most part. The guy who I have at number 10 will start off with is Xavier Watson. Before I get into anything, I want to start off by mentioning that there are a few of these names. They're versatile enough to play nickelback. I probably made the mistake of putting out my cornerbacks list before going through my cornerbacks and safeties fully. And I really just kind of looked at the cornerbacks in general. While there are quite a few players in this draft who have nickelback versatility, the likes of Sebastian Castro, the likes of Craig Woodson, the likes of Malachi Moore and Tommy McCormick. But when it comes down to it, even guys down the line like Hunter Wooler, Akili Arnold, I would say Jonas Sanker to a degree. It's one of my personal favorites in this draft. Not a really great player, but certainly very, very fun to watch. Abe Kamara. If you ever get the chance to look up at him, Abe Kamara highlight tape, I highly recommend it. The guy is such a hard hitter and such an athlete in the air. Can just make superhuman plays. Really fun to watch. But there are guys who at the end of the day really have to have that safety versatility in order to be on this list. For the most part, the guys who are on this list can play as nickelbacks, who I will point out when they do, but most of them are pure safeties. And we'll start off with Xavier Watts, a guy who my podcast partner Akilesh is very, very high on and has been for over a year. Fantastic ball hawk. He's had 6+ interceptions, 2 straight seasons. Just look at any of his games against USC and you will be really impressed. He's got rare return ability and I think can play as a return specialist on special teams for that reason. Big, strong, plays a lot faster than his size would indicate and his speed would indicate. He's got great range as both safety in the backfield, but also a tackler at the line, really being able to deny players from getting extra sort of yardage in any way. I think that Xavier Watts is he's decent enough at baiting where he earns a spot on this list. Now, I don't think he's the best by any means, but again, the fact that he is not a one-trick pony unlike Lathan Ransom gives him ability there. He's not great as far as man coverage. He definitely shows some hip tightness, not able to flip his hips like some of the better players at this position, and can definitely get over aggressive times when he can just be patient and kind of bait the quarterback. I don't see that as much, and I don't see him disguised nearly as well as I would want to, and for that reason, he only comes in at number 10. At number 9, I'm going to go with Keaton Crawford, former Texas player, really found his own at the University of Nevada. And I'll say this, he's probably the best pure disguiser as far as a safety in the game. And for those who don't know what disguising is, jumping the route, really kind of hiding behind the receiver before the chance to pounce, really making it seem to the quarterback that they have an open pass, and then coming out of nowhere. As someone who played quarterback before, this is one of the most difficult parts of football, having to deal with this safety like this. And the guys who can do it at a high level, at the next level, are usually the ones who end up becoming really solid football players. Um, Keaton Crawford is probably the best at that. And he's not the greatest tackler in the world. He's not, per se, the greatest as far as being able to um, get rangy and be able to, but he can, as far as in the backfield, not to the extent that a Xavier Watts can or some of these other players who are ahead of him. um, but he has enough range to be able to get from the back of the field to the front of the field, and be able to get from middle of the field to where the slot receiver and outside the numbers and make plays. He's a decent enough ball hawk and got decent enough return specialty where he definitely warrants himself on the list, but he has to improve as a tackler, as far as his form goes, as far as his overall range goes in the tackling department. He has to work on being able to translate and put all of that completely together before I can put him this much higher. But you're talking about a guy who's extremely explosive. So I definitely think he has the talent to be able to do that at the next level. But at number 8, I'm going to go with Billy Bowman. If you ask me who my favorite safety was in in college football going into this past season of college football, I probably would have told you Billy Bowman. I really liked him at the beginning of the year. I think he had a fantastic 2023. But I think as far as his overall potential goes, he's definitely stagnated, stalled out as far as development. This is a guy who is a you know he's a guy who can read the quarterback's eyes as good as anyone. He can return very well. He can uh, read the field and recognize what's coming before anything else. So he's a very intelligent player. He's got very good sideline to sideline skills. Maybe not the best, but very above average. Um, he has to have better tackling form at times. He's very inconsistent involving that. Like I said, he doesn't got the best range, not just as a tackler, but as an overall player in the backfield. Um, he's got to work on being able to manipulate the quarterback's eyes rather than just kind of being patient, waiting for the play that he knows is going to happen because he's seen it on tape. He's got to be more in control of the quarterback than the quarterback is of him. Obviously, he has some athletic limitations that I think can hurt him at the next level. He's only 5'10" and he doesn't use his length whatsoever really well. His tackling technique, as I said, is really poor. A guy who missed 25% of his tackles, but more than that, just in the run game, he just comes at poor angles half the time. This was something I was really impressed by him last year, and it seems like he's gotten worse. I think maybe a scheme that helps him as far as tackling, gives him easier what's the word, assignments, can definitely help him. He has versatility in the nickel that definitely helps. But when you got 40 time like 4.42, you just got to be able to put that range together. Otherwise, I can't put you much higher than number 8. 7, I'm going to go with Andrew Mukuba. Slightly a little bit more athletic than Billy Bowman, especially, well, I mean, from the side of he's definitely a lot more instinctive. They're relatively similar as far as athleticism goes, but Mukuba is definitely more agile, explosive, instinctive, whatever you want to call it, and a guy who reads coverages really well and adapts to it accordingly. I think his tape against Arizona State definitely shows that. He processes well in zone coverage, jumps the route, being able to get in front, and he's got fantastic abilities to make big plays in the open field and in the air. Great at being able to contort his body, and he can play all different types of positions and move around the field accordingly and adjust his own position, which I think is great. He's got fantastic ball skills, not the greatest, but good enough. And like I said, his football IQ is second is extraordinary. He's great as far as understanding angles, tackles, run support. Fantastic there. Really, what it comes down to, he's not the strongest safety. He will be put on highlight reels at times against bigger receivers. He will get stiff arm. He will be on Come On Man on ESPN. Uh, he can get over aggressive with his tackles. He can get over aggressive with jumping routes. He can get over aggressive with his pursuit on a tackle, and as a result, he can basically, end up missing a lot of very easy tackles that most safeties at the NFL level should be able to get. And he gets mauled against tight ends. He's not great in press coverage. He's not per se the best in man coverage, and um, he is, like I said, over aggressive. He will get a lot of interceptions at the next level, but that concerns me that he's not nearly as disciplined of a player. And more than that, I think that at time his timing is either way too early or too late. And that's not, for me, the big problem is it's not a matter of he's getting too antsy. It's a matter of his mental, while he recognizes the play, his processing is a little erratic. It's all over the place. He needs to work on just being more in control of what he sees in the tape, studies it, and just work on his overall composure. But at it's a little bit picking at straws with Andrew Makuba. I still think he's great, but with the guys who are ahead of him, that's what it comes down to. Kevin Winston is at number 6. Um, a little bit less athletic than Makuba and Billy Bowman, but a guy who is very versatile, got great tackling skills, hard hitter, huge, uses his length very well. He's got great closing speed as far as being able to blitz, as far as being able to pursue when he gets beat. And he's got great man coverage skills on top of that, which helps. His length and frame help him against smaller receivers playing in the slot. He understands zone coverage very well and manipulates receivers accordingly to run different routes, affecting the quarterback's timing. What it comes down to is when it comes to him playing man coverage, while he uses the length well, he's a guy whose footwork needs a lot of work. He's going to get baited at the next level by double moves and is going to have problems with that because he's going to struggle in the sense that he is going to end up showing a lot more separation than need be. He's not a cornerback by any nature. He's a pure strong safety. He's not necessarily the most flexible or able to contort in midair. So when the receiver has leverage on him, which happens commonly for him, he's going to miss things, and he can be manipulated by the QB's eyes. He can end up in the wrong place, and he has injury concerns on top of that. I think 6 is a fair assessment of Winston, in my opinion, when you look at the guys who I have ahead of him for that reason. But yeah, I mean, I have Kevin Winston for that reason at number 6. At number 5, we're gonna go with a guy off the radar. I'm gonna go with Maryland safety Dante Trader. Now, I like Dante Trader a lot. I don't think he's necessarily the best as far as manipulating, baiting quarterbacks into bad plays or being able to jump routes, but he can do it. He's shown potential. He doesn't do it always, but he's got enough agility, instincts, and football IQ to be able to pull that off when need be. I think he needs to be coached into being put in more situations. He's a very raw player. He's not going to be from day one someone who right off the bat dominates. I would be surprised if he does. He's got limited length. He's got limited athletic intangibles, which as a result are going to limit his potential from that standpoint. So I don't think he's on a Mount Rushmore of safeties in this draft class for that reason. But he's a hard hitter, very tenacious, relentless in coverage. When he gets beat, he runs his ass off. He's a guy who's got fantastic range, both as a cover man and as far as a tackler overall. Reads the field well, great in coverage, man and zone coverage, being able to recognize what the quarterback puts in front of him. And he's a guy who, while limited in speed, definitely plays faster on tape than he does as far as athletic performance goes. He has poor tackling technique at times, is very inconsistent as far as that. But I don't think it's anything that home. It's nothing that you can't coach. And for that reason, I think Trader is very much fair assessment to put at number 5. Number 4, probably the biggest surprise so far, Ruyan Lane the third out of Navy. I really like this guy. Not nearly as athletic as the top 3, which is why I had him at 4, but great as far as reading the field goes, as far as manipulating the quarterback's eyes, disguising himself, and then jumping the route. Fantastic instincts, great return skills, and on top of that, can play as a chess piece as far as inside the box, outside as a nickel back, and sometimes a boundary corner. Got great skills as far as man zone and press. Jams receivers when he gets the opportunity to initiate contact with them, and a very hard hitter, always looking for the ball. The problem I have with Ruyan Lane, number 1, is his athleticism. Like I said, he's a 4'5" athlete. That's not something to brag home about per se. He's struggles as far as finishing. He usually comes in too hot, and he can be over aggressive, which means that he's usually finger tackling by the fingers. His technique is very questionable when he's blitzing or contributing to run defense. He doesn't take blocks very well in that sense, and his footwork is bad, just really bad, and gets baited by play action. These are things I think for the most part can be coached given his overall just skill set. He's a very well coached player at the college football level. Again, the other problem I think with Ruyan Lane could be, of course, he's a player for a military college. Obviously, you never know where they end up because of their military status. But as far as just the football player, Ruyan Lane itself, he is at number 4 for these reasons. At number 3, I'm going to go with a guy who is in even probably the most versatile safety in this draft, and that is going to be yes, the most versatile safety in this draft class, and that is going to be Malachi Starks. Not the greatest athlete in the world. That is off the bar. But he can play as a boundary, a nickel back corner, a dime, and a safety, both free and strong. He's big enough to play strong safety, but he's also fast and rangy and twitchy enough to play free safety. He's got fantastic, superb range when it comes to that. He can tackle well. He's not necessarily the greatest tackler. He doesn't have the best range, which is why I have him at 3. But he also has those nickelback skills that are rare for a safety like that. Can read the field well, can manipulate, disguise himself in coverage. Doesn't do that often, but his tackling skills as a whole make up for what he can do, what he can't do as far as contribute as a pass disruptor per se, as far as a cornerback. But this is a guy who, in spite of his coverage limitations, his run defense is phenomenal, and I think his versatility allows him to play in the box. I think at times he trusts his recovery speed rather than his technique in man coverage. He's someone who definitely is over aggressive. I see that a lot in this draft class. I don't see that as much of a problem because of that, because of how many players have it. His leverage and his overall technique in man and zone coverage need work, which is going to be a problem for a nickelback. He's supposed to be more athletic he's definitely a lot more athletic on tape than his, 40 times would show. And he's very good at understanding where he is spatially and being able to adapt accordingly, understands how to play in the box very, very well. And with his pursuit, his play recognition, and his overall tackling ability, he can make plays that most safeties can't. So I think Malachi Starks is a very rare safety prospect, and the rarity that you get out of Starks is why I have him at number 3. The versatile guy that he is, his versatility allows him to be that high for me. At number 2, however, a guy who I think is versatile in his own right, can play nickel. It's fantastic skills as far as press, man, and zone coverage. His technique is superb there, but a guy who really is a true free safety at that, and very underrated, Jordan Clark out of Notre Dame. People talk about Xavier Watson. I don't think enough people talk about Jordan Clark. His speed is definitely a lot better on tape than his 40-yard time would indicate. His play recognition, his instincts, his agility. He can contort his body in midair in a very impressive way. Um, I think that he is one of the smartest, without a doubt, players in this entire draft. Um, a guy who, you know, footwork is phenomenal. And he's a guy who, with his skills as far as nickelback, utilizes them very well in the 40, or not in the 40, as a safety. I think the biggest thing is he mirrors, his opponents perfectly. Um, he's a guy, in spite of his deep speed, knows where to put himself on the field pre-snap and then get to the spot before the receiver or before the tight end. He plays very well against tight ends in spite of his lack of size. Um, and I think that while he might not have potential immediately as a free safety, he can play immediately as a nickelback, and because of his knowledge as far as zone and man coverage goes, he will eventually develop into a starting safety, and I think one of the better safeties in football. And for that reason, I really like him. A guy who technically has it all, very well coached, and will be good at the next level. Might take a little bit of time, not too much in my opinion. By year two, he will be a pretty good safety in the league. But at number one, I think you guys know who this is. I've been a big fan of him for a while now. Nick Wari. He's not necessarily the best safety I've ever graded, but very impressive. Definitely one of my favorite players in this entire draft class. He does nothing wrong. He's a guy who runs 4.3 speed. He has a fantastic ability to contort his body in midair, recognize plays, his agility, his instincts, his ability to get in front of the receiver and make plays, body tight ends, play against tight ends in man coverage, and show urgency and physicality and manipulate and read the quarterback's eyes, his range, his tackling skills. There's nothing I can say wrong about Nick Wari. And for that reason, he is easily my number one safety, a guy who can run the routes and mirror his receiver like a wide receiver, a guy who has true cornerback skills and can play in the box, one of the more versatile weapons in this safety class. But as just a pure safety, has all the raw athletic skills and all the knowledge and football IQ needed to play that position. Does nothing wrong. There's nothing much I can say wrong about him unless I try to nitpick. I mean, Nick Wari, yeah, I mean, he's a guy who the worst you can say about him is the fact that, what? I mean, the worst you can probably say about Nick Wari is the fact that he is, a little bit over aggressive. Again, problem with a lot of players. Um, can get lost at times by being, knowing what is coming ahead of him. That's great. He knows what's coming ahead of him. That's going to be just discipline. Coaches can work on that. Other than that, there's pretty much nothing else. He relies on his physical gifts, yeah, but his physical gifts are that impressive. He doesn't really need to rely on technique often. He will at the next level, but again, that's coachable with him. So I don't really see that being a big problem with Nick Wari. So for me, he is the number one safety in this entire draft class, and a guy who's really, really high on my draft board. But yeah,